This next one comes from L. L writes, "Hey guys, I've been enjoying the podcast ever since episode 1. I recently ran across a product called EcoSmart Studs. I'll put a link on the podcast page for those of you who want to see what these things look like. It has an intriguing take on minimizing thermal bridging. I'd love if you guys could discuss the potential pros and cons you see with this. For instance, does it affect straightness of the wall? I'll be honest, I've always wondered why Huber doesn't just adhere some low K washers to the back of their zip panels. If the crew follows the nail indicators, there's no way for them to miss the center of the washer." Well, I don't even know what this means, but I'm guessing some kind of spacer, right, between the panel and the framing.
The reason they don't is because it would triple the manufacturing cost of an already expensive thing to produce.
There you go, Al. There's your answer.
And nobody would hit it anyway.
Yeah, you'd be surprised that there's a nailing pattern. You'd be surprised what people will miss.
Yeah.
Or the studs don't line up with it, and then it doesn't matter anyway.
Exactly.
L suggests something like standard fiberglass or ultratherm would work wonders for minimizing thermal bridging, maybe even enough to do without exterior insulation. Thanks, L. So, Ian, what do you think about these EcoSmart Studs? What are they, and what do you think?
So I have to say that when I saw this letter, I was locked and loaded, ready to just completely reject these on premise, as I often do, of anything that doesn't look like the same 2x4 I've been using to build walls for 25 years. But I looked into them, and I actually kind of like them, and I'm surprised that I like them, and I think Patrick is also very surprised that I like them. But just to quickly say what they are, it's like a 2x6 stud that looks like it's been CNC'd to have a intermittent slot down the middle face of it, and then it has one edge face relieved. So as L was saying, with the back of the zip sheathing having the washers on it, you have a little standoff on the stud. And what that standoff does is it allows you to spray foam, hopefully with the right mix and hopefully with a competent contractor and hopefully closed cell foam, right, Grant?
Yep.
You can get that foam to actually expand into that standoff gap. And what you end up with is just these little tiny squares where the stud is contacting the sheathing on the outside. And from what I see, they've done some work to figure out that they can build a higher R value wall out of a standard wall construction, which is the part of it that I kind of like the idea of. From what I can see, you'd have to change very little about your standard operating procedure of building a wall. And then the slots down the middle, as Grant pointed out when we were talking about it before the show, give a great spot for running electrical wires through. So I think this stud could, if you applied it correctly, be cost neutral to building your wall if you're a spray foam in the wall cavity type of contractor.
Grant, what do you think about the EcoSmart Stud?
So similar to Ian, I was locked and loaded, ready to reject.
I think we all were. We'll just say that now. Okay.
And I might say I might still be on that boat. I see, in looking at them, I see their idea. I see their theory behind them. It seems like they have some data to indicate that they do certainly build a higher R value wall when installed properly. My one question is cost. I wonder what they're going to cost, because there is a lot of post-processing. Like, lumber alone is expensive enough to just saw it square or rectangular. So I wonder what these would cost to make.
These need a CNC operation to make these, I'm sure. Yeah.
But you bring up a point that I didn't think of, Grant. You need a really high grade of lumber to do this.
You do.
And that did not jump out at me until you just made that comment. So I'm sliding back into rejection mode now.
So, and then the other thing I'll say, and this might be an unpopular opinion, we might get hate mail about this, but that's fine, is it seems like a lot of these products like this it's just so aimed at, let's avoid the coming of exterior insulation. And I just don't agree with that. Like, I feel like depending on the wall assembly you choose, and again, I don't have any data on what an EcoSmart stud costs, but it's like, to me, I can't see how it would be that much cheaper with all that processing and the cost than just a 2x4 wall with exterior insulation. Exterior insulation also eliminates thermal bridging, probably more effectively than these do, and it provides condensation control to the sheathing. I just think, and maybe this is a personal rant, but I just think as the industry, it seems like a lot of these things are like, you know, we're chasing things to avoid other things, but I would love to see similar innovation put into exterior insulation, because who says we can't make that more efficient and easier to do? So I guess that's the end of my rant. Is I'm still on the. I mean, I guess you could use them if you want to, train, but I just don't see their mass usage taking off.
This is not the first time we've seen this concept launched. Can you guys remember the other product that was recently brought to marketplace meant to solve this same problem?
You're talking about the T-studs,
The
ones that
T-stud, thanks,
that have the
Ian,
little
yeah.
dowels between the 2x2s.
Yeah, once again, similarly complicated for solving a problem that we figured out how to solve would be how I would characterize this whole thing.
The T-studs were a little different to me, though, because they could use a lower grade lumber, if I remember. I think I remember seeing that where like they're so they could use a smaller lumber where they could cut more lumber out of particularly a piece, say, with defects, so they were smaller pieces. And I believe that the spindles or drill spindles they used to make their dowel insets seemed a little more efficient in terms of processing. But the other thing the T-stud is, I want to say, if I never used them, but I want to say they also offered some slightly thicker versions where you could put blow in like a 6-inch cavity or a 8-inch cavity, I believe, almost like a truss wall kind of deal. But again, it's just never really took off. I mean, they're around there, people use them, but none of these products, on whether fortunately or unfortunately, are not. It's not like the best thing since sliced bread.
I hate that you got to use closed cell spray foam for what amounts to air sealing. That seems like an impossible waste. As Ian points out, you might be able to insulate the whole house with closed cell foam, but once again, that's a very expensive and certainly not the least energy intensive way to do insulating, right? Would you guys consider these for the right project? Is there any scenario that you think they would make a lot of sense?
I could see if you were trying to hit passive house standards for an assembly, I could see where these would have a place potentially. Though a lot of the passive homes that I'm aware of being built are not using closed cell foam in the wall cavities. They're using dense pack or some other type of loose fill insulation, mineral wool, etc., to achieve those R values. This seems like it's aimed toward trying to get into a panelized wall system market that would be something where you're going to build, D.R. Horton's going to do 150 homes in a subdivision in Minnesota.
With no exterior insulation. That sounds something just like one of those national builders would do. It sounds perfect.
Yeah, some bean counter like me, who's way more advanced than I am at counting beans, is going to sit at a computer and determine that they can reduce their square footage cost by 0.7 cents if they go with this instead of putting exterior insulation on.
I'll say the one spot I could see something like this being used is if for some reason in a retrofit application you have to keep your wall in the same profile. That's a spot I could see it working. Like if you have room for a 2x6 wall with sheathing, you have literally no more room for whatever reason, but you're trying to increase or maximize that wall R value. I mean, that fill with closed cell would probably be about the best you're going to do So I couldn't see it in
Without
that.
exterior insulation is
Yeah, and I'm saying like a situation where you could not put exterior insulation in the building. You know you're stuck with, you have 6 inches for a wall and that's it. For whatever reason that would be, I could see it working there.
How different is this, Grant, in your mind than just strapping the outside of the wall and then putting your sheathing on?
I don't think it's much different at all.
Yeah. One thing that comes to
yeah.
mind too is the shear panel. Will you actually be able to meet braced wall panel standards with a product like this? Or are you going to have regular studs to put in the corners of the house so that you can have a braced wall panel because of what your nailing pattern is?
Yeah.
I would also wonder if an engineer would even allow a stud that's been relieved as much as this is for a braced wall or even a portal frame style assembly.
Yeah.
especially in a high wind area, right? Because is there data on how these things do in high winds?
What I see is just those little like nubs that come off. Like imagine, if you don't nail them perfect, I can just see those splitting out, and then it's like, what is your nail holding to? I don't know.
I worry about that too, Grant. Yeah.
I mean, we have enough problem hitting 2x6 standard studs with nails. Every project I go to,
the best
that's
is
one of my.
See some shiners around a double stud.
Yeah,
both sides, right?
That's one of my favorite pastimes when we go to job sites is go around and look at the framing. And I love
I bet our contributors love you for that. They love that.
I don't point it out usually. I normally just file it away in my brain. Unless it's something like, I mean, there's actually one time I was like looking up and I'm like, man, I think this is not, it was an entire panel that the entire thing was missed to the point where like you could tell it wasn't like they missed it and they went back and nailed it. There was still a gap like between the sheathing and the stud. And I'm like, you might want to just double check that. And turns out the dude just missed. They shifted their layout. So they nailed perfectly on the layout lines, but the studs were shifted over 1.5 inches the other direction. So
that is someone who's completely not paying attention, because you can tell the sound and the feel of the nail gun when you're completely missing, I would argue.
But look at the framing laborers a lot of time who are banging out sheathing. Yeah. They get paid by the piece that goes up on the wall, whether it's nailed right or not.
Do you have a little clicker like a guy counting people going into a ball game when you're just like walking around and you just hit your clicker and then look at it when you get back in the truck and drive away? Your shiner count?
No. That's a good idea though. Sometimes. Usually I'll say most times it's not a problem. If you have a diligent framing crew, this is never an issue. But if you have a non-diligent framing crew,
paid by the piece.